Fundy is one of the Dream SMP's most tragic characters. On the Dream SMP, sure, Fundy is often seen as just an unruly prankster, but in the truth, he's taken on so many other roles throughout the lore. He's also been a pet murderer who's waged wars, a presidential candidate, a double-crossing spy, a dreamin' hunter, an archbishop, a butcher, and of course, the son of Wilbur, the man who helped build and destroy L'Manberg. Fundy is a man of many hats, or rather a fox of many hats. But Fundy is so much more than just these titles. He's also a furry. Wait. Just kidding. There's a lot more to Fundy. I think Fundy is a character many people glance over. They see his fox skin, make a furry joke, then move on, like I almost did, but they ignore how much depth and complexity his character has evolved over time. Fundy's history is densely interwoven with the major characters and events of the SMP. He's been there since L'Manberg's humble rebellions, through the dark days when Technoblade was hunted down, and up past the Doomsday War. Throughout all of these events, Fundy's identity has been stretched and shaped, becoming more than just a silly fox, emerging as something much, much darker. So in this video, I will be analyzing what makes Fundy as a character tick, showing where he stands in the alignment of good and evil, law and chaos, and explaining how his story is one of the unseen tragedies of the Dream SMP. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you want to see more Dream SMP analysis, I'm trying to do one on every single character if I can. So you better subscribe and smash like, or else your life will also be a tragedy. Now, back to Fundy, a fox of all trades and the master of none. The first thing we should dive into regarding Fundy is his interesting alignment, which has been officially explained by Wilbursoot on his post in the Dream SMP subreddit. Fundy is a true neutral. Fundy is the most interesting alignment in my opinion. He is almost chaotic by being bound only by his want for acceptance. He follows no laws or statutes but still strives for one thing, to be loved by an authority. However, he strays from chaos in his attempts to rekindle with Wilbur during the war stream by sabotaging Schlatt. This forces him into dead center. True neutral characters are often neutral because they fail to lean to either side of chaos or law or good or evil. They're often characters who are apathetic or indifferent towards others, like Dr. Manhattan from The Watchmen, or like Timon and Pumbaa from the beginning of The Lion King. And at first, Fundy isn't like that. For much of the Dream SMP, he's a true neutral because of how his personality treads both chaos and lawfulness, and how his actions are morally gray. Fundy does go against the side of law, such as when he pranks people or exploits random glitches in the game for fun.
What if I log off and then you're just stuck?
Then I would have to figure out how to get down.
Hey, Rambo, you know what's really funny?
What? What's really funny? No!
Yet, he also submits to authority, whether it be as Wilbur's Secretary of State, Jay Schlatt's Archbishop, or one of Tubbo's butchers. And in the moral department, while he has worked for the freedom of L'Manberg and shown kindness to his friends, he's also killed a lot of pets and dragged other people into the pet wars, and burned down Nikki's flag, and hunted down Technoblade without offering him a fair trial. There's a lot of shady events Fundy has been part of, even if he thinks it's done for good. And the final step he took into true neutral was seen in Doomsday, when he chose to sabotage L'Manberg's chest and just watch it burn, without joining either side of Technoblade or Tommy. He stood there and laughed as the place that he grew up in was demolished in a blaze of TNT and withers. But why does Fundy act this way? Why is his identity so splintered, and why did he choose to abandon his former home? Let's go back in time to see how Fundy became like this, his history. Fundy started in L'Manberg. I'm not sure if this is entirely canon, but he says he was born within the walls of L'Manberg, as Wilbur and Sally the Fish's son. And just for a fun fact, character Fundy was born a female and transitioned to male. The more you know. Fundy grew up in L'Manberg, but he was always under the shadow of its most prominent founders, especially his dad. Being Wilbur's son wasn't easy, and this is where we see Fundy beginning to develop some issues regarding his identity and authority. Wilbur was obviously a busy man who had to create an entirely new nation. He had to devote so much time to dealing with the war, and he treated Tommy and Tubbo with more respect and honor than his own son. Even when Wilbur did spend time with Fundy, it often seemed to be a discordant relationship, with Wilbur teasing and treating Fundy like a child, and Fundy demanding to be taken seriously.
Look at his little face!
Just build your
little face!
Sure, he was allowed to be part of the war effort, but he was always belittled. Fundy already lacked the attention from his father. This wasn't helped by his mom, Sally the Salmon, being mostly absent in his life. Despite being a skilled accountant and Fundy saying she did the best she could, she wasn't around to guide him through his teenage years when it counted. Get it? Counted? Because she's an accountant? This abandonment from his parents pushed Fundy to grapple with authority figures in two very extreme ways. When Schlatt comes around, he becomes almost subservient to him, seeking the appreciation that Wilbur didn't give him. He becomes the Archbishop of Manberg. Sure, this is partially because he was trying to get on Schlatt's good side as a spy, but it seemed that he genuinely did agree with him and wanted to support him.
You had a dream and I followed it, but you brought it downhill. Everything, you ruined it.
He bowed down to the authority and wanted to go to extreme lengths in order to serve Manberg. That's the first way I feel like Fundy always tries to prove himself to authority, by becoming a subordinate who follows their tasks and gets their respect. The second way is by pushing away from authority. I know that seems very counterproductive, but he also wants to just show that he is his own person. He goes off trying to create dry waters with Nikki. He and Tubbo get up to new shenanigans trying to hunt down Dreamins, and he even runs against his own dad during the L'Manberg elections. Whether he's sucking up to authority or trying to act against it, Fundy always seems to be trying to make a new name for himself, emerging as Archbishop here or as a presidential candidate over there. Growing up constantly being forgotten or belittled by his dad left him damaged and confused, stretched to two extremes, trying on new roles and titles like he was attached to a redstone clock. Now, as terrible as that may be, that's a real issue that many people face. Well, I mean, not the whole being a fox and dealing with a maniacal exiled ruler of the Minecraft drugland being your dad, but trying to figure out your place in the world. Something that can help us understand this psychological behavior in Fundy's story is a little thing called Erik Erikson's Stages of Psychosocial Development. Erik Erikson was a psychologist who believed that human, or anthropomorphic fox, personality develops through a set of different stages. In each stage, we have to face a psychosocial crisis, and depending on how we deal with that issue, it could have good or bad effects on our personality in the long run of our lives. So, character Fundy is somewhere from 14 to 20 years old. He's an adolescent teen, and he's generally meant to be younger than most of the adult characters on the server. This age places him around somewhere squarely in Erikson's fifth stage, the adolescent one. A person's main issue in this stage is the struggle of identity versus role confusion. During this stage, adolescents search for a sense of self and personal identity through an intense exploration of personal values, beliefs, and goals. Failure to establish a sense of identity within society can lead to role confusion, which involves the individual not being sure about themselves or their place in society. In response to role confusion or identity crisis, an adolescent may begin to experiment with different lifestyles, work, education, political activities. Also, pressuring someone into an identity can result in rebellion. As we can see, this really does relate to the core issues that Fundy is facing. Like many teens, his character just wants to be accepted. So then he joins different factions, starts new initiatives, serves some people, rebels against others, all in an effort to figure out who he is. Yet, due to the dramatic nature of his childhood, this need to develop his identity is taken to its extreme, destroying flags, spying on dictators, and sabotaging former allies. Part of figuring out your identity is also about taking pieces of others and mimicking their actions and ideals. This is shown when, despite Schlatt's toxic personality, Fundy still follows him. Schlatt became a piece of Fundy's hopes and identity, so no wonder Fundy got a little bit sheepish when he realized Schlatt's evilness. Get it? Sheepish? Because he's a ram. However, this mimicry is also present in more subtle ways, such as how he and Rambo started an ice cream shop to compete with Nikki and Puffy's flower shop. When Fundy sees figures in his life that he admires or respects, he imitates them, all as a part of his want for a stable identity. Fundy's whole backstory has molded his personality into one that seeks acceptance, and he's at the stage in life where he's getting confused with who he should become and who he should be like. You know, this especially explains why he ran against Wilbur during the L'Manberg election, and why he tried to start Dry Waters with Nikki. One of the biggest figures in his life, Wilbur was a trailblazer, a leader of nations who Fundy grew to imitate in order to gain his approval. Wilbur was running for president, so did Fundy. Wilbur started L'Manberg, so Fundy started Dry Waters. Wilbur blew up the nation he founded, was killed by his father, traumatizing an entire population, causing widespread despair, so Fundy will... Is Fundy the next Wilbur? Fundy has spent so much of his life trying to live up to him, so imagine the emotional impact of losing his dad. On November 16th, after Schlatt, another one of Fundy's role models, died from a heart attack, Fundy had to watch his father blow up his home country, then be killed by his grandfather. Just imagine how much grief and trauma he has not been able to unpack, never being able to say goodbye or tell his dad how he really felt about him. After these events, he had to live with the shame and guilt that knowing one man that he looked up to was an alcoholic deadbeat, and another he looked up to was his terrorist dad.
I can't do anything with him. He left me when I needed him, Tubba.
What did you need him to do?
I needed him to be my dad!
Having Ghostbur around was a constant reminder of that loss, since Ghostbur wasn't exactly the same as Wilbur, but he was painfully similar enough to hurt. Unlike Wilbur, Ghostbur is much kinder, caring, and more compassionate, yet he wasn't Fundy's true dad. Fundy was exposed to just a pale imitation of his father, and he could see right through him. Get it? Because he's a ghost? Sorry, I'll drop it. Just like Wilbur dropped it. In the chaos of losing Wilbur, Fundy, the newfound orphan, tried reaching out to others for guidance. After the Manberg-Poctopia War, Eret considered adopting Fundy to help out the poor kid, but Eret never showed up to finalize the adoption certificate. Then when Fundy makes an attempt to bond with his grandfather Phil, he ends up scamming him and eventually hunting down Phil's best friend with the Butcher Army. Schlatt, Eret, Wilbur, Philza, all these people that he looked up to, they just abandoned him. During the Doomsday War's announcement, as Dream declares total war on the Manberg, first Fundy is still hopeful.
He's just going to do something else!
And that's why we need to take him down, once and for all, Rambo!
He thinks that they could still fight against Dream, but then he comes to a realization.
The war today is not gonna matter. And if we're on the Manberg side? If we're on the Manberg side, we're just gonna lose. It's just gonna be a loss. And at first, I cared. I mean, I did. He blew up the nation that I was born in, and I felt affected by it. I thought the nation was our home. Wilbur left me. Schlatt left me. Everyone left me. Everything I did, whether it was good or bad, it had no consequences. It had no outcome. Nothing I did mattered, Rambo.
There's no one in that nation who cares for him. In his eyes, no one ever really did. There's no one who respected him or valued him, so why should he care about that waste of space? Racked with internalized grief and utter despair, Fundy cracks into laughter with nothing left for him to do. He tried so hard to make a place and a name for himself, but in the end it never worked and nobody noticed.
And I've seen this countless amounts of times. I've seen it countless amounts of times. There isn't a place for us to be. We aren't accepted. No one accepts me.
Fundy's childhood home is completely annihilated, and tragically, Fundy convinces himself not to care, because he's tired of being hurt. He's tired of taking on all these new roles and trying to fight for a place and for people that didn't care about him. This leads to him feeling perhaps his only role left is to become a monster.
Today, what I like to do is I just want to see people cry.
All people did was ignore him, so maybe if he made them cry instead of making them laugh, they would finally see him. They would gather together and unite against him, and he would finally be someone. Fundy's words strangely echo Dream's wants for the Dream SMP to be a big, happy family. Despite Fundy warring against Dream's side in the rebellion, Fundy's despair may have twisted Dream into a new piece of his identity, leaving Fundy to follow not Wilbur's footsteps, but a certain nightmares instead. While Fundy might not be as prominent as Wilbur, Technoblade, or Tommy in the grand scheme of things, he's always been there, trying his best to form an identity, but being broken down by trauma instead. He's gone through so much throughout the lore. Fundy is a young man who has been abandoned and forgotten by those around him. He's someone who yearns for acceptance and greatness and wants to make people proud, yet he has been torn between trying to become someone's assistant or become his own man. Fundy, the silly fox man, is one of the Dream SMP's saddest tragedies. Next time on the Dream SMP Character Analysis series, I'll be analyzing one of the craziest, most notorious, funniest characters of the server. Someone who has gone through it all: death, betrayal, romance, and everything in between. You don't want to miss it, so please subscribe and hit the notification bell if you want to watch more analysis. Hello, this has been Scrawls. I hope you guys enjoyed this look into Fundy. Hopefully the puns weren't that bad. It was super fun to make, even though his story was a little bit depressing, but I hope you learned something. Also, special shout out to Mellow Z, who let me use their amazing Fundy fan art in the thumbnail, and go support them. They make really great Dream SMP art and other stuff as well. And yeah, that's about it. This is the end card, and if you made it this far, then thank you for watching all the way to the end and supporting this channel. I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.